I'm T. My pronouns are they, he. I'm the executive director and founder of the Autism Support and Advocacy Center, and I will be facilitating the conversation. Here with me are three great panelists to share their experiences and expertise on the topic of employment. Bernard, Jonah, Gerald, thank you for leading us through this conversation today. We will put the link to their bios in the chat in case you have not had a chance to look at them. As always, we want to name that the full spectrum of autism is not present across the panel. While no panel could represent all the unique ways human exists, we do want to specifically acknowledge that non-speaking perspectives are missing in this conversation. We are in the process of widening our networks and know that we will have non-speakers represented in future panels soon. Additionally, we are in the process of raising more funds to increase accessibility, including live captioning, ASL interpretation, and Spanish translation. Donations you make today not only go toward the compensation of our panelists, but also to our ability to provide this level of accessibility in the future. If you've not had a chance to contribute yet and you're able, a link is going to be in the chat. In collaboration with panelists, we've developed 6 questions for the discussion. Panelists have had the questions for a few days to prepare. When we're finished with the questions, panelists will take questions from the audience. You can submit your questions in the chat, or you can use the feature in Zoom to raise your hand. Throughout the conversation, we will hold space for any pauses that may occur and encourage an active chat room. Please remain on mute if you are not speaking. Also keep in mind the level of vulnerability it requires for panelists to share their stories. So please hold space for them in this conversation. At times, panelists may elect not to participate by turning their screen off. Attendees, please give that space and compassion for yourself as well. You can leave at any time. All right, we're gonna move right into the first question, which is for you, how would you describe an inclusive workplace?
Yeah, I can definitely start. Yeah, I would describe an inclusive workplace to be staffed by people with and without a disability. So, so them working together rather than just, have, the non-disabled or the neurotypical be the bosses or the managers, and then of course, and then of course the neurodivergent, the autistics, the disabled, as just like I said, the workers, and of course, a more accessible workplace, where where pretty much the work is is efficient, I would say, and I would say each individual, doing, just doing a role based on their strengths, I would say. So like those who may be very good leader, that would be have these leadership qualities, like they would be they would be more fitting to be a manager than just a worker or an associate or whatever you would call, and so yeah, the inclusive workplace would be just it definitely would be staffed by people with and without disabilities, with each role being assigned based on their strengths and their experiences.
Yeah, I want to add to that. I agree. An inclusive workplace has just a variety of different people at every level, in every role of the organization. I mean, the reality right now is that autistic and disabled people are working at every level, at every role of every profession. Neurodivergent people, a lot of them just aren't open. A lot of them just don't know their neurotypes or abilities. But an inclusive workplace doesn't discriminate against, you can't be a leader because you're autistic, that kind of thing. So, but also it's a place where everyone can feel a sense of belonging. I don't think inclusiveness has much meaning without belonging. Like if people are included, do they feel safe? Do they have psychological safety? That's true inclusion to me, where people can be themselves without feeling they have to conform to social norms, which is neurotypicality. And there's truly inclusive workplaces are free of normativity. Like neuronormativity is what's disabling neurodivergent people in the workplace. Neuronormativity is positioning neurotypicality as the only proper way to behave. So then neurodivergent people get in trouble for just being themselves. And oh, I was gonna say something else, but oh yeah, and another thing is prioritizing people wellness. So the wellness of the employees, even the wellness of the customers who are coming into this place or who are using these services, prioritizing that over company wellness. Just all this talk about productivity and efficiency. Capitalism is already productive, it's already efficient. But what's happening is that people are burning out because of it. So it doesn't need to be any more efficient. What needs to be more efficient and productive is just the people wellness. People need to feel well. They don't need to wake up on Monday morning with their stomachs hurting and they just feel sick because they have to go to work. They should wake up Monday morning and just feel fine because they're going to go to work. But so many people just don't have that psychological safety. And that's what inclusion means to me. It's just freedom to be safe, to be yourself.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing those thoughts. I think I've been thinking a lot about safety lately, in place and in community. So that one's really sticking out to me right now. We'll move to our next question, what has been your experience with disclosure?
Yeah, I can go. I would say my experience with disclosure has been helpful, ever since I've been working with a job coach, because, just disclosing really, helps to, get accommodations for work and so that they know, so that way, the employers know how to best support you at work. And so it definitely has been helpful for me. And also, it's definitely been helpful in terms of, of like the job search as well, like searching for jobs that will hire, people, and that, because I mean, every workplace is supposed to be, neurodiverse, but I know that as far as when you look at like their rules and even the job descriptions can be can be somewhat, limiting or discouraging, because, it's either you are qualified for it or you're not qualified for it. But sometimes I know, like, the jobs that I've applied for, I've either been overqualified or underqualified for the positions, and then of course, accommodate, and of course disclosure does help to people know that, you can do the job, but under the right, accommodations.
I'm very happy that is how it's worked out for you, because in a lot of other cases, both personally for me, then family and friends and other coworkers I've worked with, unfortunately, disclosure has really only been helpful in theory. There's, again, just personal experience, but I've had about a dozen jobs in the past 6 years, and most of them, if not all of them, besides my current job, I've had to leave because I ended up disclosing my disability, and there has been an immediate change in how I get treated on a personal and a professional level. I think that everyone should be able to disclose. Absolutely. It's the right thing to do, to be able to be open about what you can and can't do and have that respected. But I would say that in practice at this moment, it's unfortunately not being embraced as it should be.
Yeah, I agree with that. We live in an ableist society, and our society is very, very autistic-phobic. And yeah, when people find out someone is autistic, they just start treating them differently. They treat them like a baby. They treat them like they can't do things. The thing about me that's different is that I think it's maybe because I never learned how to mask. So people treat me strangely anyway. People infantilize me, they treat me, I don't know what it is, but they do that anyway. So um I just found disclosure to be beneficial in that it just weeds people out faster. So like my whole internet profile is it's just open. I'm just openly autistic, and everyone knows, and it just saves me time. I don't think of it as disclosure because that feels like pathologizing myself. I think of like, would I disclose that I'm left-handed, or would I disclose that I'm an introvert? It just comes up. Like me saying I'm autistic just comes up in the same way that I would say that I'm left-handed, that the same way that I would say, talk about my favorite color or whatever. It just comes up, and I don't police myself. I just let it come out. And I just found it to be some quite helpful, because people who are autistic phobic, they just go away.
Yeah.
And people, and then I just know that I'm not going to have a problem, or I mean, sometimes I do, but I'm more likely not going to have a problem with this person regarding my neurodivergence, because they already know. But I would say a problem, like my experiences with disclosure, the first time I ever said that, told someone I was autistic, it was just a few years ago, my last year of graduate school, and I wanted captions for my dissertation defense, because I can never understand my professors. They're just not logical. They're supposed to be. So then I found that to be incredibly helpful. They treated me the same as they always did, just like there's something wrong with me. So it didn't really change anything. But I've also found like asking for interview accommodations has been well, it seems not helpful. Like I never get them. They always cancel the interview. But what that does is it saves me from working in a toxic workplace, because I've been in several toxic workplaces. So at the moment it feels hurtful and counterproductive, but it's actually quite productive, I think. Because if they're not going to give me interview accommodations, then they're not going to support me at all in that organization when I work there. Um, but I've also found they want you to prove your disability, even though like reasonable accommodations are like what I asked for in the interview is nothing. It's like, can I have the interview question beforehand? And for somehow that's such a problem. So they want me to sign this release to talk to my doctor. And it's like, well, okay, I have a great doctor, but she doesn't know anything about my professional life. She can't answer your questions about my professional life. Why don't you ask me? It's just so bizarre. I'm 36 years old, and you want someone else to speak for me, to tell you what I need in the workplace. And my doctor just knows what I come to her with. Certain health things that have nothing to do with autism, that have nothing to do with ADHD. It's just other things. And I don't have a diagnosis for autism, but I do have a diagnosis for ADHD, but I don't know how to access that because it was from adolescence. and autism was self-identification for me. But I don't see why disabled people should have someone else. First of all, why we should have to prove anything, but also why we should have to have someone else verify our needs. If we're getting a job, then we're adults, so we can verify our own needs. It's obnoxious. So yeah, disclosure is very problematic, but I found it just beneficial to my own life. But again, I don't really think of it as disclosure. It's just whatever comes out of my mouth comes out of my mouth, and that's just the way I am.
I've been saying that for years. Thank you. Oh, man.
Thanks for sharing your thoughts in the chat, Gerald. Yeah, there is a fear with sharing, I think, for some people, because of the stigma. But I agree, it is like a screening tool for yourself. Like it's in that sharing of identity, you're determining if you will find belonging in that place or not early on, and not have to put in the extra work and potentially trauma to like find that out over a period of time. Yeah. Our next question is about mindsets. What mindset shifts do you think employers as a whole need to make? Jonah, will you start us off with this question?
Yeah, sure. I have. I gave a speech about this a while back, so I am ready. Maybe someone else will hold on. I can't find my notes.
Okay. Would someone else like to jump in while Jonah's looking for notes?
Yes. Well, definitely. Yeah. Because this was definitely what I should have answered in the first question, but of course this is the right time to answer. The employers definitely need to be more open-minded for sure. Like they need to make it the workplace more accessible. Not just for people with this, not just for autistics and people with other disabilities, but for everybody. And just like I said, just to be more open-minded. To really just hire people not just based on their disability alone, but just based on the skills and the interest that they have for the job. Like that should be, of course, that should be the number one focus for sure. I mean, of course, you want, employers want a diverse workplace, and so this kind of goes where the whole integrated competitive employment comes into play, where we want, but as far as the integrating part of it, yes, I mean, of course, employers want to hire people with disabilities, to make it more diverse, but they also should be hiring it, because that's just the right thing to do, not just because they have a disability. And so just being open to just knowing that these are people that can do that can perform just as well as those without disabilities, but they just might need, certain supports and accommodations to do the job. And so it's all about like what they can bring to the job too. That's important too, like the skills, in addition to like what makes them, a good worker. Like if they, are. I mean, there's so many different words that I can use, but it's interesting how like when you see like with the people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, like they do kind of bring that warmth, that welcoming, to the customers, that come in, or to the people that they're serving, but as long as it's, as long as they're doing it, what they're supposed to do, So, I mean, I'm gonna leave it at that.
All right, I found it. Thinking tea. All right. A mindset I think employers need to let go of is that everyone learns new things the same way at the same speed. In reality, people learn and remember in different ways. There are actually 12 different learning styles, and people can be combinations of each different learning style. Research shows it takes about an average of 20 hours for to learn a new skill. For some it will be less, and for some it will be more. Employers, they need to accept people's strengths and flaws and help them find their way. Some people will need more time or assistance. How fast someone completes a task is a fact, not a judgment. How fast someone completes a task does not make them better or worse than someone else. Employers, when they train new employees, you cannot use a one-size-fits-all approach. It has to be dynamic. You need to learn your employees' learning styles and use that to customize their onboarding experience. And remember that it will take some people longer than others. You will always get the best result if you allow an employee to handle a task the best way for them.
Yeah. One thing I want to say is people, like earlier what I said, focusing on people wellness instead of just company wellness. So like giving support all throughout the employment process, not just when someone has a problem or when someone just starts a job. So like what comes to mind immediately is like more continuous feedback on people's projects. Instead of just complaining when they don't do something you don't like. I mean, just giving people information. As an autistic person, I'm about a thinker, so I need to know everything about the project. And I'm a writer and editor, and I want to know like where this piece of content is going after I send it to you. I want to know who concepted this idea and why, and all the parts of it, instead of just telling me to do something and not letting me know anything about it. And I just think employers overall, I don't think people in their MBA programs are learning anything about people, like learning about the humanities. I think employers need to learn to read people. They instead what they tend to do is they take like what you look like, and then they stereotype you and then say that that's who you are, that's how you should behave, when every single person is different, even if we do come from multiple social groups. So it's just like learning how to read people and developing empathy, because I see a lack of empathy with a lot of employers, a lot of people I've worked with, and a lot of people I've met. It's disturbing. And just like this focus, just just focus on creating just a healthy workplace, and just accept that there is no such thing as normal. Normal doesn't exist. It's only been with us since like 1873 or something. So just I don't know. I like people panic when I don't behave the way that they thought I would, or like when I acknowledge things like there's a lot of downtime, and I didn't know this at one point, but there's this rule you're not supposed to talk about having so much downtime. You're not supposed to acknowledge it. So just getting rid of all these rules about behavior, because it frankly it sounds like high school to me. And I just think that people need to just be a lot more mature and start acting like adults. And this fear of being uncomfortable, employers need to get over that, because there's just a lot of people in their workplaces who are uncomfortable all the time. Neurodivergent and disabled people are uncomfortable a vast majority of their lives. And so just giving up your comfort, stop centering yourself and start I mean, stop centering anyone. Just become focused on the people that you're supposed to be supporting. Your employees are your customers in a way. They're also your charges. I mean, in a way, you're charged to support them, but instead, these employers treat people like they're machines, like we're just things, and just throw us away. Like a bunch of, I mean, we've all seen these layoffs. And it's the health of the company has to come first. Why? I mean, what they're saying is we have to make sure that we're making profit. You can have a healthy company by making little to no profit for a few years and then keeping your employees and making sure that people are living. Because if you don't, in America, if you don't have a job, in this society, this world, if you don't have a job, you die in a lot of places. And so why is the health, the profit of the company have to come before the survival of people? So yeah, just a lot more empathy.
Yeah, people have been made into commodities, and that has to be reversed. Thank you for sharing your experience in the chat, Jackie. Next question is, what neurotypical norms prevent or deter inclusivity in workplaces?
I can answer that one. Well, I mean, kind of piggybacks on the question on the previous questions. Just how we're expected to behave, and so as far as the neurotypical norms would be, of course, always, following, this schedule as followed, or it could be, like a person, so and also, just expecting, a very, what's the word? But yeah, definitely behavior for sure. Like as far as like, if a person is walking around, and they're not sitting at their desk, or they're not, standing, on one on one task, so they might look at like, oh, that person is not doing their job, or they're not doing, their job, because they're just walking around, the place, when they could be, they just need, they just, like I said, they need to move around, so that's another one example of that. And then just, maybe just thinking, let's see, maybe just how we're expected to, like I said, sitting still the whole time, or just staying at one place at one time is the norm. And or maybe just, or just, or just feel like, like, pretty much, only sticking to like two breaks, and two 15-minute breaks, or one lunch break. And but the person, might need a longer break or a longer lunch, but they might look at that as, well, if you go over your break time, you're breaking, the rules. Or a person, like I said, showing up late, or like they might look at that as they're just being irresponsible. And and of course, I also forgot to mention, just a person just sitting there doing nothing when they could be, processing, and they're not, but the boss might or coworkers might see that as they're just being lazy or they're just playing around, you know. So that is those are definitely a few examples for sure.
Um, I wonder if there are neurotypical norms that don't deter or prevent inclusivity. But yeah, it's just all this conformity, this expectation to socialize, this assumption that all the stuff that they know intuitively. So like all the gossip that's going on, um, there's just so much neurotypicality that I'm not aware of, largely because I can't understand what they're saying, but also because I just don't care. Like I'm not interested in gossip. That stuff makes me sick. I'm not interested in like people like sometimes expect you to lie for them. I don't lie. I've been in workplaces where like I never leave the house without a book, and I've been in places where people freak out if you have a book, but a lot of people are staring at their phones, and I just like I don't understand why my book is freaking you out. I don't understand why just because everyone's standing in the corner talking and I'm not doing that, why that's freaking you out. Why is it so scary that I'm not looking at you or looking into your eyes? So like all with neuronormativity, that there's just a certain way you're supposed to behave. Just it's so I would say largely the neurotypical norms, without getting specific about all the behaviors, is largely expectations and assumptions. And if you fall out of line with those expectations and assumptions, then there are often social sanctions, which are just prominent in toxic workplaces, as they are prominent in a lot of schools. I mean, neurodivergent people come out of high school, even middle school, with all this trauma, and then they're put back into it in college and even in the workplace, because so many people in the workplace, like I said earlier, are not mature. Like so many people have not matured since high school or since college. And I think that's where a lot of these expectations and assumptions come from, that you're supposed to behave a certain way. Like I've just been called too serious, too honest, too intelligent. So people think I'm trying to make them seem dumb by the way I talk, but I don't have a social performance. I just behave one way all the time. And then this assumption that if they're not behaving in these ways, then it's okay for us to punish them. And it's not just social sanctions, like it's exclusion in the workplace, but I mean, people get fired. I have been fired for not performing neurotypicality. I have a twin sibling who I live with, and they're autistic too, and they have too. And they finally found a very inclusive workplace, like late last year. But we're about to be 37, and so they've just been searching for years, and they finally found one. So these places are out there, and what's happening there is that people, it's very neurotypical, but they just don't care if you're not participating in it. Like they just don't bother you about it. If you're not standing there making small talk, they don't punish you for it. And that's what makes it inclusive. So it's not really that neurotypicality is preventing inclusion, it's neuronormativity. Neuronormativity is upholding neurotypicality as the proper way to behave, and that's what's preventing the inclusivity. Oh, one other thing is like, and even in the hiring process, so judging people, I think maybe someone said this earlier, judging people for personality. This is why I freelance. Whenever I go into job interviews, a lot of freelance, I can take a lot of contracts without going through interviews. Or I can get through one interview, but the higher up I get in the interviews, it seems like the less it's focused on my skills and more on my personality. And that's where I just can't get through. Like they're just so offended about my personality. But like, what does my personality have to do with my job? I'm not going to be a television announcer. I I'm not going to be working on the radio. My personality, it just doesn't matter. And so that's just another thing, screening for personality. They want to know if you're someone who they would like to go have a beer with. And I'm someone who doesn't drink alcohol, but I also don't spend time with my coworkers outside of work. So I'm just never going to be that person. But there's no need for you to be looking for friends while you're hiring people. You should be looking for employees.
Yeah, we as autistic people, as neurodivergent people, have to learn all of the ways to communicate and work with those neuronormative expectations with neurotypical people. And like we have to, as part of like survival, we have to learn how to navigate those things. But it's and then the burden, that means the burden is on us all the time, because places aren't working to also develop their ability to communicate across neurotype. Yeah. So we'll move to the next question, which is, what other challenges or barriers can autistic people face that prevent them from accessing employment opportunities, such as underemployment, housing, transportation, healthcare access, etc.?
Yeah, I can go. Yeah, there's a lot of information, but yeah, I can definitely can go for sure. I mean, one of them I think it comes to my mind would be the housing, because some of them might be homeless and might not have a residence. They might be living out of their car, or they might be living in a homeless shelter or hotel. So I mean that's one that comes to my mind. And let's see. Oh yeah, transportation is one because of because the job that they could be commuting to might be further from where they live. To that, like there may not be a bus route that's to their job site, to the workplace. So that's one barrier. Barrier right there. Transport. Would be the transportation because of that. And then let's see. And then I guess I guess just the whole thing, attitude, or just the whole thinking that a person can't get a job because they have because they're too disabled to work, or that they have too many or that they have too many things that might prevent them. So that could be one of the reasons why a lot of those individuals are going to rely on Social Security, disability, and supplemental security income, for those reasons, to where they think, well, if I can't work and if no one's going to hire me, then I'm just going to then I'm going to have to apply for disability.
Yeah. And I just going off what you just said, Joel, the last thing you just said, I know several autistic people who are applying for disability, not because they can't work, but because people won't hire them. And I see for that, they deserve disability. They deserve to get it. And sometimes I think about doing it, but I just don't feel like it. I just don't feel like doing paperwork, I guess. But one thing so one reason why I became an advocate, well, the first idea I had why I became an advocate was because I learned about autistic burnout. And I just wanted to, talk to people about it, see if I could help autistic people learn about it. And I realized autistic people already knew about autistic burnout. The problem was avoiding burnout. So then I became a life coach, and I'm a life coach, an autistic personal coach. And so I help people avoid autistic burnout. But a lot of it, but I bring that up because burnout is a very a very large barrier to employment. I mean, just the energy you need to keep up with applying for jobs, and then the interviews, and then once you get a job, if it's a toxic workplace, then all the spoons you use up just advocating for yourself and keeping up with things. I mean, as autistic people have highly active neurology. We're always taking in a lot of information. So, I mean, so that means we burn up a lot of energy doing things that most people could just do without burning up a lot of energy. And so I see a lot of this, the problem with people getting employment and maintaining employment is just that energy. And a lot of it is the environment too. They have family members or colleagues or whatever who will not allow them to work within their limitations. And all disabled people benefit from learning and accepting their limitations and then working within them. I stay out of burnout by working and living, staying within my limitations and not going outside of them when I can help it. And yeah, I just see a large problem is just the energy that we use. And there could be so many things, like even just like universal design that could just make our lives easier. And just a lot of the other problems like lack of resources and all that. Oh, a lot of that is a result of just not understanding neurotypicality. And then a lot of it is the attitudes of like, if you're disabled, that means you can't do things. Like I just fired my a psychiatrist who, because I told him I was disabled, he kept trying to get me to admit that I was getting SSI. He would ask me where I got money. I would tell him about my work, my freelance work, and then he was trying to get me to admit that I'm on SSI. Because in his mind, disabled means that you can't work. And why are you working with disabled people? Why are you working with people then if you don't understand the complexities of being a human? I mean, disabled does not mean the legal sense or the government sense. It doesn't always like it's a construct that means different things to different people, especially to disabled people. And another thing I want to say is this energy burning thing is also just a loud, bright environment. So all these places people have to go to where there's music playing, doesn't need to be playing, that's draining for me. And then the lights are so bright because they're fluorescent lights because they're so cheap. But they burn me out. And there's just so many environmental factors that would keep autistic people from burning out in the workplace or burning out trying to look for a job. And I think if there's a lot of talk about autistic or neurodivergent strengths or weaknesses, but not really enough talk about there's just not enough talk about what the environment is doing, I think. Like it's not all about what we can or can't do within our bodies, but so much about what the spaces that we're navigating, how that impacts our bodies, which is, so I found such freedom from working from home because I just have so much more energy. And the lack of remote opportunities. I see a lot like fewer remote opportunities, and I see companies wanting people to go back into the office. And yeah, it's probably about the real estate and about the companies making money off the property and the land, but it's not conducive to a healthy workforce where a lot of people benefit from working from home.
Yeah, and if I could just piggyback a little bit on what you were saying, when it comes to getting disability and being on disability. I personally have been trying to get disability for, oh man, I think 3 to 4 years now. And it's such a balancing act when you already have a job, because people assume, oh, you have disability and you're trying to get disability, you can't work. When in reality, a lot of the time, again, especially for me personally, it's not that I can't work any at all. It's that due to my disabilities, I can only work, certain jobs for certain hours for certain days of the week. And it can be more than just autism. It can be a lot of things. For me, it's a combination of things. For a lot of people, it's a combination of things. And so it can be really hard to find balancing act between, okay, I need disability, but I still need to work. And that also kind of plays into a lot of other things, like trying to get an apartment, and they need can't remember the right word, but the paperwork for what your income is. And if you're someone who's trying to get on disability, it can be really difficult, because if you're trying to get disability, you don't really know yet what your fixed income will be. You know what it is right now, but it will change. And I mean, my brother's husband just went through this, where they wouldn't let him, there were multiple apartments that he was denied because he at the time didn't have a fixed income, because he was trying to get disability. And so it really is tricky to be able to get help with your disability without accidentally hurting yourself along the way.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Jonah. Yeah, there's also on the flip that if you do have disability, because of the beliefs that you all are naming, there's maximums, right? There's only so much that you're allowed to make so that you can keep getting those benefits. And a lot of employers don't provide health benefits unless you're working 30 and sometimes 40 hours with them. And for someone who has a disability, who needs to make sure that they have good health insurance, there is health insurance coverage when you're getting disability. And if you're in that in between, you could make too much but not be able to work enough to get the benefits from the business, but working too much and lose the benefits from disability. And so it makes people get stuck in a place where they can't grow. And with also there being such small limits on what you can hold as an asset, it actually prevents you from saving money to be able to get an apartment. If you're only allowed if you have to hold for a deposit and a first month's rent, those two together, depending on where you live, could easily exceed the maximum that you're allowed to have, and you'd be dropped. And so yeah, that's been in a lot of the conversations lately with employees. And I would also love to highlight what Gerald and Bernard have been talking about in terms of like environment and structure and schedule. And when, now I'm able to, I do have so much more energy because I am setting my schedule. Like I'm setting my environment. Like I've been able to create the space around me to be what works for my system and when I work, and having the flexibility to adjust that when sleep was really difficult for a period of time, or just like some jobs absolutely do require like time sensitive things, or like being somewhere at a certain time, but there's lots of places where that's not really a requirement, but it is the norm for things to be set at these very specific times. And I've always struggled with that, especially if it was requiring me to be somewhere early in the morning. So I've yeah, just naming that from my experience. Okay, we have one last planned question before moving on to anything that other folks might want to add or ask, which is what advice do you have for autistic people who are looking for employment right now?
Okay, I can.
Mine, go, you go first.
Okay, yeah, I can go. Yeah, the advice would be, of course, well, for anybody that's entering, the workplace. Well, of course, it's always good to reach out to people in your network, people in your contacts, and just discuss the types of jobs that you might be interested in, or even companies that you might be interested in. And then, of course, it's never a bad idea to 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 research those companies, and also see if there's any like offices or locations nearby that you can visit, and you can talk to a manager. So I mean, that's one advice. And then, but also, of course, just be sure about what you really want to do, for sure. Like, and I know one of the biggest things for me personally would be, think of the things that you like and dislike in a job, or that you, or the things that that you're very good at doing. So it always starts off with those two, what you're interested in, what you're good at doing, and then, of course, the non-negotiables, the things that you look for in a job. I mean, of course, obviously, pay is probably the most important for a lot of people, because they don't want to just take a job that pays them less than the minimum wage. They want to at least have a job where they're able to pay their bills, be able to pay for things that they want to do. Um, just just basic needs. Needs, housing and food, of course, and transportation. But just definitely just start out with just think about the things that you like, that you're good at doing, things that activities and things and hobbies that you enjoy doing, that could lead to finding work that you like. So if you like video games, then you'll probably go to a GameStop, or if you like music, whether it's playing, any music, maybe you might apply for Guitar Center or Music and Arts. Or if you like, or like I say, anything, it's always good to just talk about your, the things that you enjoy doing, and the things that you are very good at doing, because those are two selling points for sure.
Yeah, that's very close to my advice as well. The other advice I give, which is just to everybody who's applying for jobs, no matter who they are, what their disabilities are, or anything, to just take deep breaths. Don't be discouraged. I know it's so hard to even get a job interview, let alone a job. And my advice really is to just keep trucking. If you're fortunate enough to be in a situation where you don't need a job immediately, it's okay to take a break, you know, give yourself a few days a week. Unfortunately, not everyone can do that. But if you can, that is what I always highly recommend. Just keep applying, you know, and and just kind of, you know, keep applying, but don't do so much that you get really overwhelmed. Just do the best you can, you know, you'll find something. It might be hard and it might take a while, but you will find something. It's just a lot of it is just patience and perseverance.
Yeah, definitely. Don't disqualify yourself. Um, I I've done that a lot. Like being someone who's finished a PhD like 2 years ago, I still have a hard time understanding where I fit in industry. So but I mean, today I just got an interview for a senior writer position, so I'm starting to understand where I fit. But a lot of this is just me guessing. Like I'm just applying to a bunch of different roles and seeing what responses I get. But because I'm autistic and I don't know, like a place can seem inclusive to everyone else, but not to me because I'm autistic. It might be uniquely hostile to me and people like me. So another thing is just casting a wide net, which is exhausting. And that's where like it's just really important to have boundaries. Like what times are you willing to look for a job and what time do you need to rest? Like for me, it's if it's outside of work hours, then I'm not doing anything. Occasionally I'll meet a client or something, but I'm not going to look for a job. I'm not going to schedule an interview after 5 o'clock. I don't do any of that stuff. If a recruiter is being annoying and contacting me too much or asking me for information I don't feel comfortable with, I just tell them to stop talking to me. Like cast a very wide net and don't be like loyal and grateful for people's attention. Like a lot of employers without, especially those without empathy, they want you to feel like you should be grateful for this opportunity. And I practice gratitude daily. I'm grateful for every opportunity I get, but I don't see it as a gift. I see it as something I deserve. I see employment as something we all deserve because without it, we die. And so I think there's nuance there, but be grateful for opportunities, but don't let people control you with their with the attention they give you. Like a lot of people think you're disabled and I'm paying you attention, so so you should be really grateful that someone's paying attention to you because you're disabled. And it's gotten so obnoxious that sometimes people will ask me to pay to speak at conferences and things like that. I mean, being really grateful for attention is a way to get sucked under by toxic employees and employers and toxic people. So really just apply widely. Like if something isn't working for you, like you're applying on a certain job board, then move to a new job board. If this draft of your resume hasn't been quite working for you for 6 months, do some revisions on your resume. If you don't know how to do revision on your resume, then find someone to get feedback from. But just constantly be revising and changing things. Like I'm constantly changing like my bios and online and various things, and just changing according to what results I'm getting. And as time goes on, I'm feeling like I'm getting more and more traction. And I think it's because I'm not static. And I think it's also because I persevere. Like when I feel like giving up, that just means I need to go rest and meditate because I'm exhausted. But if I actually think, but I don't believe there's like despair doesn't serve you. So just giving up isn't going to get you anywhere. So yeah, just keep persevering, which is one thing autistic people are really good at. And always follow your interests and joy. That will lead you to good places, actually.
Yes, all of that, everything you said. Yep.
Oh, yeah, that's a great way to end our questions is like, yeah, follow your joy. Yeah. Well, we'll open up now for questions or comments from attendees. You can put it in the chat or raise your hand to ask or comment. We're a pretty small group right now, so it feels like could have some space for that.
I just wanted to say this has been a very eye-opening and very enjoying program. This has been wonderful. I really am so grateful to all of the panelists. Thank you so much for sharing your stories and giving such good advice.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that.
Thanks.
Well, some positive comments in the chat, thanking everybody. I'll keep in that line, like Gerald, Bernard, Jonah, thank you. That was such an important conversation to be had, and I look forward to getting the recording shared with all the other folks that asked to hear it and be a part of it. This is so needed in our community and beyond. So I hope lots of people get to hear it. Thank you for your willingness to be in conversation, for sharing yourselves and your vulnerability. Hannah, thanks for working the chat with me. Attendees, we hope this conversation provides you the opportunity to reflect on and push the narratives you may hold around autism, and that you carry new understandings forward in your work and communities with your families and with yourself. Thanks again, everyone. See you next time. On May 19th, we will be discussing communication in partnership with Impact Voices, a nonprofit organization that supports, empowers, and connects AAC users and work to affect positive change by the way people interact with and support augmentative and alternative communication users. Thanks, everybody.